Having caught the cultists by surprise, our heroes led a daring assault on the source of Avandrad's woes, the Temple of Elemental Evil, during which it was discovered that the cult had recently splintered into opposing factions, each based on the twisted doctrine of a natural element: the Red Corridor, the Cold Corridor, and the Dark Corridor. Just when things were going to plan, the party's ally, Big Skull Tour, gave into a berserker rage and began attacking friend and foe alike. As a last resort, he was slain by his own allies. Once the battle was over and their enemies defeated, lingering Red Corridor cultists scattered to a western hall. Meanwhile, Nolame and Wolfrun began to trek deeper into the temple, where they came upon a curious golden mirror, smashed to pieces. With a moment to catch their breath, the remaining members of the party set out to resupply and gather clues that might aid them on their quest. For who knows how far the halls of the Temple of Elemental Evil goes, and who knows what might linger, waiting around the next corner.
What have we here?
I don't know. I came in here to go ahead and see if there were any other cultists that hadn't been made aware of the situation. I was going to try and divert them somewhere else. But the fact that this is the only thing in this hallway, it feels as though it was intentionally placed. Do I notice anything about the broken mirror?
There's an inscription on the golden frame of what looked to be a mirror. It appears to be celestial letters, but written backwards and upside down.
I think these may have been around prior to the cult taking over these temples.
These are different than the ones that we found at the corrupted shrine, though, isn't it?
These are completely different. Just like the carvings that are painted over, these seem unique as well.
What sort of cult is dabbling in all these various sources of power? Isn't it normal that they'll focus on just one sort of god or one sort of belief that they have a problem with?
In my experience with the dark gods, they're all at war with each other.
Olame, a few years ago, when you were about 50, just coinciding in the time when you spent in northern Runia, it was the fashion for specific nobles, especially those of more higher standing, to carry around a hand mirror with them. But this connection with the writing, it's strange.
Nolame reaches forward and sees if he can take the mirror off the wall.
When you touch the frame, just like a very sudden and violent sense of malevolence.
I immediately, slowly back away from touching it and leaving it where it hangs. And then I turn towards Wolfrun and I say, I think we might want to get Zaid in here.
Wolfrun saw your reaction to touching it and just knew that it was bad. It was like, I'm going to go get the bird paladin. Paladin, there's something here you need to see.
Very well. As their attention is being drawn towards these objects, do I notice the one in this room as well?
Alright, you do notice the frame there. There's also a pile of papers on the desk, and that's basically most of what you see. The
I'll search through the papers.
Are you searching through the papers? So there's a map that they all seem to be arguing around, and there's an arrow pointing from this location to Avandrad, and then from Avandrad to Ludo, and then from Ludo to Illithron. And there seems to be notes all around that concerning the division of the Gorosad Peninsula. It seems most of their work is wrapped up in disrupting political movements in major cities. The city of Ludo would be an obvious choice for destabilization. In the days of Arcturus the Conqueror, Ludo became famous for being one of the only Arno cities that surrendered without a fight. Their rulers have been dealing with political instability ever since.
Well, this seems important. I want to take that map, and I want to just gather whatever information that I think they would want to look at, Zaid and them.
You also pick up a missive saying that the Dark Corridor would be exclusively meeting with the Dark One and the Beholder. And the date for that paper is today.
I definitely grabbed that with my face full of concern, and I'm sort of hastily grabbing whatever looks most important to kind of gather with the party.
You now have evidence of a conspiracy.
You guys see me enter with a bundle of various parchments and maps.
Looking like a proper scholar.
He says nothing, he just nods. There's a quill in my mouth, so I'm not speaking.
You can see Agelus in the distance, helping himself to the unsipped tankards at the table. He seems distracted by that for now.
Nice.
He's like, fucking hell yeah!
Can I see anything at the end of this hallway?
You can see a nondescript pair of doors, although it has 2 handles, and a blue tapestry next to it. It's rather dim, there's only 1 or 2 torches in the distance.
This mirror appears to be cursed, or what once was a mirror. What can you tell me of it?
Well, let me take a look here.
Don't touch it.
Zaid peers in closely and thinks back to any tales or religious texts that might have mentioned something similar. Well, it looks to be just an ordinary mirror. I could attempt to knock it off the wall with the butt of my spear.
Nolame hears Zaid say that and makes his way back and says, I wouldn't mess with it. We have something here that's written in a higher order's language, and yet it's so corrupted that I can't even touch it. I wouldn't agitate it any further than what we might already have.
Cultists clearing his throat. If you allow me, you said there's writing upon it. Maybe take a quick look if you do not mind. As you say, there is broken glass here of what once was a mirror.
There are some shards at the base of it on the floor. It looks like this was done months ago, maybe.
Coulter nods. When there was glass here, it very well could have been some type of viewing device. I can see clearly that these are the characters of a language I am well proficient in translating, but they are in reverse and upside down, which is the antithesis of their very nature.
Can't you just look through them with a mirror or whatnot?
Perhaps. I do not know.
Well, if we're not to do anything with it, we should be on.
Angelus is still in the other room, and there's a door beside you and a hallway to your right. What do you wish to do?
Zaid'll start heading towards Agilus and then just kind of peek into the door on the left.
It appears to be some sort of storage closet, though there's a musty kind of putrid scent in here.
Ugh. Things to do, people to kill. Going off to get Agilus.
Oh, is it time to move on? What'd you
Let's
find
go.
down the hallway?
Some sort of cursed mirror.
They have good ale here. It's mixed with wine for some reason, but it tastes alright.
Curious concoction.
He makes a hoarse grunt when he passes the smelly room. When you get to where you are, you hear the sound of a door close, and you heard the sounds of some unsure footsteps.
And you say it's dark to my right?
It is dark to your right. Remember, Wolfrun and Nolame are still in disguise.
I'm gonna go ahead and snuff out the torch, and then immediately round the corner.
So you see I wouldn't say youthful, but like a man in his prime, sort of like mid-20s, kind of leaning on his spear and looking into the distance curiously. Hello? He's dressed similarly to those in the cold corridor. Behind him, there is double doors.
As I approach him, I attempt to make myself sound distressed and say, Brother, we have been betrayed.
Betrayed? By who?
The other corridor. They gather in force to the east, and they're preparing to go ahead and push farther into the temple.
So that's what that noise was, I guess. Where are the others?
The others have fallen. I've just retreated from there.
I don't recognize your voice. Who are you?
I'm only a new acolyte to the temple. This is my first time that I've been brought here by my master.
You hear him huff. Well, you picked a hell of a time to join the corridor, but you should probably go into the pool room. Get yourself armed and ready. We were planning this for tomorrow, but it seems it's already upon us.
My master may still be alive back there. Please, will you come with me just to try and pull him out?
Alright. But you owe me, okay?
Of course. I'm assuming I'm not, hush-hushing. Wolfrun should be able to hear that,
Everyone
right?
hears that, yeah.
Okay, so I said to the east, so I'm luring him away from everyone. And then I'm mostly listening to see if anyone's coming up behind me.
He tugs on your elbow. Oh, what are you doing? Be careful. And then he points with his spear to the sides of the room.
No, he was bleeding whenever I last saw him. Worry has made me careless.
He nods and shrugs. That's alright. That's why we always say, walk carefully. This whole place is trapped.
You have a clearer head than I. I'll watch your back. You lead the way with a steady hand. And as I'm right behind him, I push him off into the middle of the room.
I'm on my way down the hall already.
Zaid jumps into action.
Thorn was fluttering about here so he can sort of flap on over, and he flaps over and does his little dance in the air of trying to distract the enemy. I'll just do my dash to keep up.
That means it's the cultist's turn. Alright, you barely get him to step one toe into this bear trap. It doesn't pierce his skin, but his ankle is locked in it. He's kind of stuck now, but he's not down. What he would do is immediately try to stab you with his spear to create some distance, and he's kind of fanning it around in a wild yet strong slapping motion. You bastard! Though his embarrassment, anger, result in his spear tip whistling by both you and the owl. Which means it's Wolfrun's turn.
Indeed. Wolfrun's going to produce his crossbow. Trusty crossbow. And he's not going to use any of his tricks because he doesn't think it's necessary at the time. So he's just going to try to fire straight for the man's chest. The bolt flies true, hits the man directly in the chest, just above where his heart would probably be located.
Now, by the sound of the bolt landing on him, you can tell he's wearing some sort of composite armor. But by the sound his voice made, you can also tell that at least some of the tip made it into his body. Wolfrun, you hear
Anytime.
the distinct voice of Agilus Keghammer, gagging and struggling behind you.
Oh, you bastard!
I spin around figuring, well, these guys have it.
Zaid, it is your turn.
He can try and nick the nape of his neck with his rapier.
You have done a cutting blow, blood spilling over his uniform. He still seems a viable threat. He's still vigorously fighting against both of you as best he can. At your presence, he seems to gawk, unsure of what to make of a Sacrii in the flesh.
I can't believe he's still standing. What is this ferocious foe? I try to use my lucky spell of the day here, and I incant the word of ice.
His next move, though somehow still alive, is to reach up with his free hand and crush the crystal on his turban. With his other hand, he tries to slash at the trap that he's stuck in. It seems an almost hilarious fail. Like, what did he think he could do? Cut through metal?
Alright, now I'm going to rush back to check on my good friend Keghammer.
When you turn the corner, it's clear that Keghammer is in a bit of a bind. His hammer and his shield are both on the floor, and he's grappling with a man who's just stabbed him in the side. It doesn't seem to be lethal, but he is bleeding quite a bit.
Oh, damn it, Wolfrun, they got me!
Get down! And I aim my crossbow straight at the man's head. And I miss terribly.
You hit
Shoot.
Agilus.
Fuck.
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 You've killed Agilus.
Oh my fucking god, what?
Agilus looks confused. Even the warrior behind him kind of looks confused.
It's alright, laddie. It's alright.
Is he really dead?
Yes.
Fuck.
I said he's a minion, which means he's level 0. But you do know where his family is. In Everdark. Do you wish to do anything else in your turn?
I've already done enough, haven't I?
So it means that it's the cultist's turn. It's fair to say that he brought about Keghammer's death. There was a moment of hesitation, and then he charged. He touches the gem on his forehead. He doesn't crush it, and he engages you like a real warrior. So he slashes at you with his spear. The ones patrolling this hallway seem a bit more trained than the ones you slaughtered in the other room, but misses all the same. So Zaid, it's your turn.
Zaid will sweep his rapier down and try and catch him in the groin or the leg.
Fall into one knee. He is cut down, though he still poses a threat, and it looks like he still intends to continue fighting.
You won't get through me.
I feel I have enough to cast another ray of frost. Cultists!
It only just barely misses him. But when it touches a door beyond him, you can notice that it does no damage to it somehow, as if a magical field is in front of it.
I make note of that.
This last poor fool tries for one more desperate lunge. And then again, he misses both times, amazingly, and then braces himself for the end.
I'll look him in the face and say, it's clear that what powers had blessed you before have forsaken you now. Your only hope now is to die a clean death. Lay down your arms, and I can promise that it will be clean. Continue to resist, and it may, by accident, be painful.
It's unclear, since he's wearing a mask, if he has heeded your words at all. Either he has agreed, or he's trying to catch his breath for one last attack.
I had spun around and noticed a foe from behind, struggling with our woodsman, so I send forth a flurry of magic missiles to let him know that I am here. Fly out from my stretched fingers.
The man raised his shield to block one, but it went right through the wood. The others made him stagger backwards. Wolfrun, how do you respond?
Wolfrun looks at the man, dead in the eye, and just says with the word, "You." He then pulls out his battle axe and strikes the man. And whiffs. Just doesn't even hit him. Filled with rage at the death of his friend, he cannot make a clear strike.
So that means it's Nolame's turn.
Nolame looks at the man who had a chance for a clean death, sighs as he draws back his sword and says, "You could have had a clean death," and then aims to strike low between the legs.
Your rapier finds purchase in his balls. He was still alive until he fell down on the other trap, which closed around his face with a wet and disgusting crunch. One would hope he was dead at that point, but he was certainly out of the fight.
Zaid hears the commotion behind him and jukes, heads straight back into a dash down the hallway.
The Sacri are known for their ability to quickly cover long distances. Very well, then Coulter, it's your turn. What do you do?
Coulter was gripping his staff in both hands, ready to charge, and then he sees Zaid charging in, and okay, I kind of hold back, and I'm just trying to gauge if I can get in position where I can do a ray of frost here. So you just kind of zip up and around the corner and try to ray of frost him from there without getting in Zaid's way. That's what he was about to do, basically. So
You could do that.
and he just gets over here, keeping his cantrip, which he's been practicing, pointing the finger. Cultists!
Direct hit.
Potentially slowing his movement.
He reaches up towards the crystal on his forehead and crushes it this time. And he attempts to throw a dagger at Coulter. 5 damage. Wolfrun, I think it's your turn.
All right, we're going to try to hit this guy again. I took another large strike directly for his neck with my battle axe.
Right in the neck.
I make a deep gash right at the base of his neck. I have a little trouble pulling my battle axe back out.
He staggers. He's starting to look around and finally understand the fact that, oh, he's not escaping this.
This one never shattered his crystal, did he?
That is correct.
Nolame approaches the dead cultist and takes a look at the crystal that was bound to his face, which is in a bear trap, so we'll see if I can see anything.
It seems to have an inner radiance. It's meant to look like a shard of ice, perhaps.
I attempt to remove it from him and then search to see if there's anything else of value on him.
You see a bone necklace. You see a silk turban. You now have a strange crystal. And he's wearing cold weather gear.
All right, I will take one bear trap.
You are now the proud owner of one bear trap. Nolame, do you wish to do anything else?
I suppose I'll start making my way back towards the rest of the party.
Very well. It looks like they're beating on someone.
Oh boy.
Zaid, it's your move.
Zaid squeezes in past Wolfram, holding up his shield and then extending the blade through the opening.
Your arm must be getting tired. He easily deflects your blow. Very well, Wolfram.
Okay, so I rear back after pulling it from the man's neck and attempt to strike in the same location.
Oh my goodness. With a swing of your axe, you send his head flying. His neck is still spouting blood like a fountain.
Well, he chose his fate.
Wolfrun falls to his knees.
Oh dear.
I killed him.
And so comes to an end the tale of Agilus Keghammer. No longer will the halls of Everdark Hold be filled with his boisterous laughter. Yet, with his death, unknown ripples of change will begin to affect the Gorosat Peninsula, for better or for worse. This was a learning experience for me as a dungeon master. Rest assured, I won't be using minion rules for followers after this dungeon. After the battle is over, our heroes share a moment of silent introspection to consider the gravity of the loss they have endured with the death of Agilus Keghammer.
Did Nolme step out?
He went down the hall. Nolame, you see before you two double doors.
He headed down that near my hallway.
I attempt to open door.
Luckily, door was unlocked and it opened. Before you is a combination of a tool room, a kitchen, and a bedroom. You can orient yourself rather easily, and you can see that there's another set of doors that must lead to the main meeting hall. It is dark in here, but with your advanced vision, you see some weapons to your left, and some bottles on the shelves that stick out to you immediately, as well as you also see another ring on the wall, but this one has no shards of glass under it.
I immediately am intrigued by the mirror and approach it. Is there anything different about this mirror besides the fact that there's no shards? Like, is the celestial language different this time?
It is an exact copy.
And then can I take a look at what bottles you said were? Do I recognize anything?
There are 2 unlabeled bottles on the top shelf, and on the desk there's a bottle. It is alcohol.
I'll be taking that.
You also see blankets, you see arrows, and you see some basic weapons that they must have gotten from town.
No real need to spend time picking this over right now. I'm just looking to see if there's anything immediately of value. I'm going to take the opportunity while I'm in here to set this bear trap up by the door.
Wolfrun takes a moment to snap himself out of it and starts to follow.
Calder, it's dark as sin in here. You seem to be talking in a pitch black room over there. Zaid, you think you sense Nolame.
Nolame, is that you? Hello?
I say back to Zaid, it's me, be careful. This appears to be their armory. I've placed a trap near the other door that seems to lead back into the hallway in case they try and double back behind us.
Very good. Well, once you're finished in here, let's keep on down to the next room, I suppose.
Near where we knocked that one man into these bear traps, there was some sort of magical barrier. I don't know if you or Calther would have any sort of expertise on that, but it's probably worth taking a look.
Zaid and Calter leave the armory to investigate the shimmering door at the end of the hall. There is a notable silence behind the cold corridor's entrance, where once the faint din of activity and conversation added to the general life of the halls. The lack of muffled conversation had only begun after the battle had ended.
I'm going to stay in the armory and look for crossbow bolts.
There is a pile next to the arrows of 20 crossbow bolts with
I will
iron
be
tips.
taking those. And also, are there any battle axes?
There are no... there is a battle axe, actually. There's 2. So, Calter and Zaid, you see a blue tapestry. There's a torch to your right, but otherwise, it seems to be an empty junction. The door to your left appears nondescript. Though you didn't notice before, only when the din behind the door stopped did you realize people must have been talking. Like there's suddenly a new silence as soon as the light appeared.
And I go silent, and my eyes dart to Zaid quickly, and
I think Zaid would walk over to the others and kind of beckon them over to all gather in the same area. Come on, fellows, let's see if we can access what's behind this strange, ensorcelled door. Come on now. Mustn't dally. All right, come along then.
I apologize. I expended much magic in haste there, and I'm still gathering myself. But yes, I have found some documents, and if we are gathered here, I would like to present them for your perusal. It shows a map of the countryside and some of the landmarks. And here is Avendrad, and it clearly depicts some of their plans.
And there is text on the other papers he found detailing their plans to cause instability. It seems that they thought that their victory in Avendrad was a foregone conclusion. So there does seem to be more of a political angle to their designs.
We need to bring this information to damn near any authority we can in the entire region. That gem or cap insignia or whatnot. I wonder if it might be a key of some sort.
Nolame emerges from the back of the party and pulls out the gem and then extends it to Zaid, clearly indicating that if you want to try something with it, you're more than welcome to.
Zaid motions over to Coulter. I believe that the Master Wizard here might be the best to handle this matter, although you are a bit more of the spry one. Perhaps either you or Wolfrun might be able to check for traps. I don't suppose either of you have a pole, or maybe I could drag along a grappling hook or a rope.
I have all of those things, yes.
Coulter steps just up here to examine the tapestry while they, more skilled, will examine the door.
It basically looks like fan art of an old Cordian religion that worshipped like the deepest darkness of the ocean. These people clearly have not based their religion in any deep knowledge of the elements. It's more likely that they're more focused on the evil part and less on the element part, people choking each other underwater. Cord was the principal deity of water. Oceans, storms, rivers, lakes, and rains all fell under his influence. In Runia, worship of Cord was the only other legal religion allowed by law. This was due to its enduring popularity in the south in conquered territories. That the cult couldn't find historical or cultural influences of their own to inform their beliefs was perhaps telling.
Very amateurish.
This is why a society must be led by a pure and just course of moral striding, like by Rune. Rune being represented by a harpy eagle and is the god of justice and order and law and proper authority and occasionally war, especially under the practice and guise of the humans of Runia that were brought together under Rune's worship through the immortal overlord Arcturus, who conquered the Runian mainland and then several other outlying regions, which include the Gorsad Peninsula, which we are on now, before his mysterious death and or disappearance, by which now there's a bit of a power vacuum forming under Merrick the Mortal, who is his successor, and the position of the Gorsad Peninsula lays a bit in question now. The Sacrii people, of which Zaid is a member of, are one of the only races encountered by the human Runians that made campaign on this peninsula, that were devoted themselves to Rune, and such that they were kind of absorbed as a client state into Runia rather than being conquered like most of the other human tribes or beast folk of Arnos. And so he's quite gung-ho for Rune, although of a slightly different ethnic flavor compared to the human Runian worshippers.
Quick thing, how long ago was it that the immortal king, Arcturus, how long ago was it since he died or disappeared?
It has been 9 years since the immortal Arcturus the Confessor, formerly known as Arcturus the Conqueror, inexplicably disappeared. Though King Merrick's ascension was a seamless transition, and he's been reigning as the first mortal monarch ever since. Nolame, were you investigating anything in particular over there, or just kind of taking a break next to the fire?
I was getting closer to the firelight, so I could go ahead and pull out the bound book. which is just my notebook from my bag, and a charcoal pencil, and I'm taking a quick sketch of the tapestry.
Was there anything behind the tapestry?
I have not investigated the tapestry. All I did was look at it and then let people know there were things down here. But Nolame's being extraordinarily cautious in this place because he doesn't understand these cultists well enough to feel confident in knowing how they trap things. That's why he's letting everyone else touch things first.
That is why Calter is standing here and hadn't stepped closer, and his eyes waver on the already exposed traps that we just observed.
Zaid will be waiting for Nolame and Wolfran's ascent before continuing forward.
Nolame glances over and tries to infer what Wolfran is thinking.
How does Wolfran square this with his own religion? He's a follower of Sylvanas, and that's where this all started from.
That's a difficult question.
What's going through Wolfran's mind?
Wolfran's a bit of a zealot, but he's not much a philosopher, I guess, if that makes sense. Like, he doesn't like seeing things desecrated, but at the same time, he's not about to pontificate on such things. Yeah.
All right. At Zaid's expectant looks, what does the party do when faced with this door and the silence that waits beyond?
I sort of gingerly cup this gem in my hands. I try to get my eyes properly focused on it. And I did see that the enemies, upon feeling the threat of our attack, they were attempting to break this or do something with it. Did any of you see that?
They didn't seem to break it until things got a little bit desperate, though, which, now that Zaid's mentioned that it might interact with the door, seems to support that suspicion. It was almost like part of what they were doing was to gain the power the gem had, but it's almost like they were trying to deny us access to them as much as trying to win the fight.
I like this thinking. So yeah, I'll examine this gem. It's most likely magic, I can only guess, without doing the proper ritual, but the usage of it. So I look at the door. What's visibly obvious about the door? Did it have a magic lock on it or something?
A faint, bluish field made itself visible, and as he's looking at this, Wolfran, very faintly with his expert hearing, it seems like they're moving furniture in the other room. Or you hear something like grinding against the floor, like something wood.
I make eyes back at Zaid. Say, do you hear that?
Kind of tilts his head and shakes it.
Alter calls his bird over to his shoulder and whispers, Thorn, do you hear anything?
Only when Wolfran mentioned it, you heard the tail end of the ghost of a sound. Like, it sounds like your neighbor's moving furniture or something. And then it stopped. Your owl telepathically hoots back to you, movement. He shits on the floor.
Owl pellets everywhere.
I might have some magical assistance here.
Now, Calter, you are the premier student of the Academy of Natural Philosophy. It's not every generation that they get to sponsor a wizard in training. It's very rare. There are very few wizards in this world, as far as you know, and as far as they know. But your latent talent and your skills that you've developed have guided you a bit of insight. You have detected a relationship to the crystal and the door.
I believe that you are correct in your assumption that this may give passage here. If someone, I'll go ahead and try if you wish, but anyone may attempt, possibly. I know not what danger lies beyond that they are concealing, though. If this indeed opens the door.
Perhaps they will be caught unawares if you are the one to open the door and if you don the face mask of the fallen one.
That would be wise.
I did have the costume at the ready that I was wearing, the disguise, so I slipped the mask and everything back on.
Which disguise?
Let's see.
There are 3 robes. There's the one with the green flames, there are the red trimmed robes, and there is the kind of mercenary armor with blue trim that these guys are wearing.
So we don't know who's on the other side of this door. Do we want to assume it's the blue faction, or should we have something in mind for if it's the red corridor on the other side of this?
I think it's best if we just prepare for the fact that whoever's on the other side of the door is probably hostile.
Well, I managed to go ahead and bluff my way through at least 2 interactions with these folks pretending to be of the friendly side. Like, maybe we could make the trick that we used in the main room, we could try it here. We could have one of our people go in there pretending to be a blue person, one who would be a red, and based on who's in the room, if we see that it's mostly cold corridor, the person disguised as the red corridor guard would act as though they had captured the other one of us prisoners. So if I'm wearing the blue robes, Wolfrun's wearing the red robes, we walk in and we see it's mostly red robes in there, then Wolfrun would play it as though he had brought me in as a captive, and I would act submissive just to go ahead and catch them off guard, maybe distract them, or have them turn away from the door. That way the rest of the party can rush in behind them. We don't want to go in there, spells flying, things popping off immediately.
Head first.
Yes. Me and Wolfrun would be going in first, so I look to Coulter and Zaid and say, I'm assuming that the best way to handle this, we'll do a smaller time frame than last time. Give us just maybe half a minute to go ahead and get in there, draw their attention away from the door, and then come in, and we'll try and attack them from 2 different directions.
We know not what lies beyond.
Well, we're not going to find out just standing here.
Nolame extends his hand towards Coulter, indicating that he'll take the crystal.
I hand it to him.
To continue to fool the members of the cult, Nolame donned the clothing of the cold corridor. So when you two approach the door, you notice that this time there wasn't that sort of phase of ethereal light. There still is an awkward silence on the other side, and you can hear with your elven ears some sort of, you know, like if you're outside of a pool room, you can hear like rippling water and like echoes.
Yes.
Kind of sounds like that when you get closer.
Nolame tries to not get distracted by this elemental magic. Looking back at Wolfrun and the rest of the party, he extends his hand to the door and pushes the door open.
All right, the doors swing open. Before you is a dimly lit room. It must have been on the very edges of the temple, as it seems to be mostly in disrepair, though like a child's fort in the woods. It is occupied by quickly thrown together furniture. So you see in this room, on the southern wall, there seems to be some sort of laboratory station. What might catch your eye instantly is a hanging gibbet or gibbet, where a strange woman with white hair is hanging with a bag over her head. In front of you, directly, is an overturned table with an armed and armored warrior bracing himself. In the distance, you can make out another armed warrior just turning around from arming himself from a battle station. And that is all you see right now. So, the man behind the table directly in front of you relaxes his shoulders and immediately asks, "What's going on out there?"
I gesture into the doorway and gesture for Wolfrun to walk in.
I have
Go
my
ahead.
hands at my side. My eyes are pointed downward.
As Wolfrun walks in, I reach behind him and roughly shove him in the direction of the middle of the room, not more towards the table or the other way. I'm trying to see if I can tempt this guy in the northern section to come around from there.
My roll 20 is lagging like hell. What did I get for my second roll?
1.
I got one for both of
You
them?
got 2 1s in a row.
Holy shit.
I fucking know.
Wow.
Bor, you have to basically give this to us. What are the odds of getting 2 1s in a row?
Okay, so
All right.
immediately this guy says, "Close the door behind you."
I continue to shove Wolfrun towards him, and I say, "We've already taken care of the ones that are out there. This is the last one."
You can hear him sniffing audibly, and he says, "Oh, what is that stench? It smells like fish.
What?
It smells like burnt fish."
Remember the barrel?
Oh, it was fish in
Oh,
the
yeah,
barrel.
that's
right.
right.
I'm like, what the fuck is he
Sure.
talking about? Fish? What?
Makes sense.
I look at him and then wrinkle my nose and look at Wolfrun and say, whenever these tried to take us by surprise and attack us, they led things off by lighting some I don't know what it was, but it smells like fish and now it's on fire.
Improve the smell of the place, in my opinion.
What happened to Ulrich? What's going on?
I leave Wolf Run in front of the table, but I'm slowly trying to make my way around like I'm talking to this guy. I turn to him and say, he was caught as part of the initial surprise. They were among us before we even knew what was happening. We just heard people crying out, we smelled the horrible smell burning, and next thing we knew there was blood on the ground.
Do you know if this is on orders of the Beholder?
It all happened so fast. They didn't even utter any sort of war cry, any sort of damnation or declaration against us. They just started killing.
Ro, since you are hearing everything, you know that this new individual has never spoken before. All you have to do in the 6 days that you've been here is listen to voices.
Yes, and during these 6 days, she's also been attempting to pay attention to the particular footfalls and gait that individuals coming in have to the best of her ability. Ro is purposefully being silent and just paying attention and learning.
So he says, all right, well, we need to close that door and secure the room. We've been assuming that the Beholder would let us enact our plan, but not even I knew that they would act first. This changes things. Put him into the pool of limitless tears.
I am looking around, and he can tell that I'm starting to become distressed. And then I look at him and say, is this all that we're able to escape here? And then I look at the other two Cold Corridor members in the room.
Worry not. There are agents afield and afoot. Though, yes, we did rely on our agreement with the other corridors. Now that we are enemies, this changes things like our access to the torture room, our access to the prison. Mistrust has turned into, it would seem, bloody war. But if we are to rule the afterlife, it has to be on our terms. And if they're worshipping gods from the plane of elemental fire, then they've clearly misunderstood our entire purpose here.
So Zaid will utter out a, those red bastards got me.
The one you're talking to looks towards the corridor. How many of there are with you? What happened?
I look to him in shock and say, I didn't realize that anyone else had escaped the slaughter. We only have moments. More of the Red Corridor had escaped inside. We need to go ahead and at least secure the armory and bring whatever wounded we can back inside.
You can see someone turning around to regard you at the top of a flight of stairs to the north. He is backlit by a strange magical blue fire.
You have to remember who we're dealing with here. We're dealing with members from the Red Corridor. The more you allow a fire to expand unchecked, the more it will burn whenever it finally gets to the end. We need to take this opportunity quickly and have a fire break. We need to make sure that they can't just grab those weapons and kill what few remaining allies we have. This room will be more secure whenever there's more of us. Whenever things are cold, they grow closer together, they grow stronger. We need those people in here, even if they are wounded.
All right, bring them in.
I can't carry them all myself. Come with me. You. And then I gesture towards the person at the northwest. And I say, you need to take responsibility for this prisoner while we go out and take care of this. And then I look to make sure that either he's obeying or, the guy following me commands it.
These two would eat your shit if you said it was chocolate. So he's following you, Nolame.
As soon as I get to the plane of the door with him behind me, I look over at Zaid just to make sure he sees what's happening. And then I start over to the right to draw this guy, hopefully away from the door frame.
Zaid is just gonna straight up launch his rapier into the guy.
Okay, so as soon as this guy turns the corner and notices Zaid and Coulter, he says, Coulter?
Oh shit, well.
Oh, what?
I keep forgetting all these fucking cultists are townspeople.
Yeah, my eyebrows are just kind of up slightly, it's like pity for the gentleman getting skewered, but he chose his path. I do a simple prayer to Rune for his soul.
He's a good citizen. Zaid approves.
I use my free hand to pull one of my battle axes from my waist and slash at the gentleman in front of me. I hack into his side, catching him unaware.
Ro, your hands are bound, but they are free enough if you want to remove your blind.
Gladly.
If you do, then you would notice a strange sort of woodsman attacking one of your assailants. It's now the first time that you're seeing your environment. Zaid, where did you slash?
Probably towards his free arm.
So, likewise, you can tell by the turn of his head that he fully intends to close the door. They're with the red corridor, or... And then he glanced at the sacrificed armor and shield. I don't know who these people are!
Well, Zaid would have been momentarily taken aback by his recognition of Coulter, but the man's doubling down on assisting his fellows means that Zaid would steel himself and ready for another attack.
Ro, it is your turn.
Are Ro's hands still bound?
They are still bound, but they're bound in front of you, at the wrist.
The final thing she'll do while trying not to draw too much attention to herself is attempt to unbind her wrists.
Like a Chinese finger trap, you manage to tighten your bindings inexplicably.
Ro takes a moment, closes her eyes, takes a deep breath, and tries to center herself, realizing she's a bit out of her prime, having been held captive for these days, and that's all she'll do.
Very well. Zaid, it is your turn.
Well, Zaid has no reason other than to deal out justice towards him and raise his rapier once again for a riposte.
He doubles backwards and slinks against the wall. He lets out a howl of anger, rage, betrayal, a mixture of emotions.
He's going to place himself between him and the door, if he can now.
As you move between this man, he slumps against the wall. Though not dead, he clearly cannot conduct himself in combat anymore. And with his free hand, he removes his mask, panting, his face sweaty and pale. Calta, you can see that this is Vox Amathion. Within the Academy of Natural Philosophy, Vox Amathion represented a secret sect of scholars who fantasized about the Gorisat Peninsula one day being ruled not by royalty, but by wizards. Vox had taken an uncomfortable interest in Coulter ever since he had displayed his rare gift for the arcane years ago. He is old, which might be the reason why he fell so quickly in battle. His beard hangs low, and his head was balding. Coulter, he pleads, call your dogs off. Now you know, Coulter, that Vox Amathion was the one that pulled you aside. He is the one that spoke of a dream he had, an ideal that wizards would rule one day, the land of Gorisad. He seems to be the loudest voice for a burgeoning campaign in the Academy of Natural Philosophy. To see him here now underscores his extremism, but it still is quite odd that he would join up with just anyone.
Why have you chosen this path?
It seemed, he says, that we had the power to overthrow our usurpers, though I have not your talents. It was my will to throw in with anyone who could possibly make a change for our realm. I never thought it would come to this. Though I wielded the weapon, I had no dream of using it. You must believe me. Tell your friends to spare me. Please. I am a man who has taught you for years.
Why do you plead to me for your soul when you have already given it away to another, much more powerful than I?
At your words, he goes silent, and then slumps against the wall. Which means it's, Wolfrun's turn.
I am still in here hacking away at this gentleman. I'm swinging at his midsection.
All right, you bend his armor. He backs up immediately. I yield, enough! He looks over his shoulder. Help me! You notice that tucked into his neckline, there is a handkerchief with very fine silk embroidery that usually only nobles carry around. While this is happening, the wizard in the distance starts barking out orders.
You! Throw the keystone into the pool of limitless tears quickly! Our time is upon us!
Ro, it is your turn.
Alright, she's going to, call out, hey, you there, big fella. Why don't you throw me that dagger or a crossbow bolt or something? and she'd like to ready an action to stick her hands through the grates of this gibbet and attempt to catch something should it be thrown her way. Ro's first thought will be to attempt to cut her bindings. It'll be difficult and awkward, but she'll certainly try once she gets some sort of sharp implement.
Okay, with that done, this gentleman with the spear next to Wolfrun, he uses an action to take out a small box from his utility belt. There's a white powder. He rakes his fingers through and then starts stuffing it in the wound in his chest.
Well, then I will shout, "The warriors of Rune are here!" And then I run and then try and dart past Zaid and run into the room 30 feet to try and get past where Wolfrun and this guy are fighting.
So yeah, you clearly see that the guy on the stairs is trying to move down and he's barking out orders and stuff. And upon your orders, he's like, "Rune!" and then hastens in his movements. So you clock Ro. You can see that she's trying feebly to get out. And you, with your heightened hearing, heard her cry for aid. The wizard at the top of the stairs lifts his hand, and from the pit in the middle of the room spills forth a torrent of water. It does not smell like lake water, it smells like salty, like low tide. It does not yet spill out into the hallway or anything, but it is filling the room quite quickly. And from this magical torrent of water, he summons forth a being that you have never seen before, but have only studied. An elemental of pure water. It coalesces before you and takes a moment to try to understand its own existence. On the far wall was an ancient painting of an event only mentioned in the most obscure and forbidden legends in Menaris. It depicted the mythical homeland of the elves far across the ocean, frozen over, and a wave of water pushing an armada of ships towards what is now Menaris. Nolome would only be familiar with this tale by sneaking into the most forbidden parts of the libraries of Menaris. Even still, the elves hold it to be just a tale, but to see the painting here was an oddity of its own. When he sees you look at the picture, the wizard steps forward. "Our powers are ancient," he says. "Even those of the elven kind have called upon these powers. Good, evil. They are as fluid as water." But by the end of his little speech, he has descended the staircase entirely, lifting his hands, though each palm empty, in a way that he's like holding weapons.
Seeing this creature arise and hearing what the robed figure has to say, Nolome, while still looking at him, backs away with a clear amount of fear in his voice, says, "This is true, but what was good to one and evil to another all depends upon the whim of circumstance. While it was the water that destroyed that land that was before, it was the water that bore the exiles away from disaster. You cannot be sure how this water will flow whenever the soldiers of Rune arrive and try and manipulate the currents of things."
Still believing that you're a member of his order, he nods and says, "I know, but we have assurances from the beholder that the powers he has gleaned in the mirror reflect our destiny."
Nolome looks at him and then, with a little bit more resolve in his voice, but still backing away from the water elemental, says, "All depending upon the will of the users how the tides flow. If you believe that you can save us, I beg that you do, and save those that are still out there. My master was still there whenever I was forced to flee back in here."
As soon as the water elemental enters the water, the body language suggests in a human sort of way that it realizes something, like its shoulders and arms kind of lift, and then it completely descends into the water, becoming one with it. Zaid, it's your turn.
Well, he'll look over to Wolfrun and say, "That one or the other," indicating that Zaid's ready to pounce.
He looks at Zaid and says, "This one's a civilian."
Zaid will use his charge attack.
Zaid, you arrive just in time to encounter one of the cold corridor cultists throwing in a strange pale blue glowing stone the size of his fist into the pool of limitless tears.
So Zaid tucks himself in, leaning forward and rushing in with the same vigor as the fabled dragoons of Faranrii, who would, mounted or unmounted, fight with the wind at their back and their lances or swords flung forward like great spears or lances, and then kind of lets the momentum of his fleet feet push him forward into the defender.
Falling back first against the rack of weapons and armor, you can tell instantly that he's bleeding out. Wolfrun, it's your turn.
All right. A little unnerved by the whole water elemental appearing and then disappearing. I'm going to focus my attention on the cultist that Zaid is fighting right now. And I'm going to move within firing sight of the cultist that Zaid's currently engaged with. As I grab my crossbow with one hand off of my back, I pick up the knife and try to toss it towards the gibbet.
I assume that Ro would attempt to catch it.
Yes, she's been waiting for this moment her whole life.
For at least 6 days.
I'm judging where it's going to land outside, or where it's going to approach from the gibbet, and stick my hands through the opening quite adeptly, and then I attempt to kind of flip the dagger around in my hand so that the blade will be pointing towards me and towards the bindings on my wrist. Excellent. Okay, so freed from the bindings. How wide is the blade of this dagger?
It's not a 5-finger. I would say it's 2-finger.
All right. I look for any sort of accessible locking mechanism on this gibbet, and if I find one, I would like to attempt to use the dagger to pick a lock.
There's a padlock on the outside. You felt this with your fingers every time there was feeding time.
All right, I attempt to pick the lock, as difficult as it may be with this dagger.
Begin. You might need a bit more.
All right, she says, all right, I expected that. And is still kind of taking in this fact that this water elemental appeared and poured into that water space in the center of the room. And she's also noting this figure with the rapier and their skilled charge into battle, and she kind of nods approvingly.
This individual, the one Wolfrun had spared, looks behind him and then attempts to go through the entrance. Nolame, it is your turn.
So I could do 1, 2, 3.
Mm-hmm.
And then drawing my bow, I take aim at the robed cultist and let fly.
It sings wide and glances next to him. He does notice, however, that you have broken your disguise.
That one on the south wall. He's a traitor.
Pointing to Nolame.
My lord, it's behind you. That's what I was shooting at.
Roll deception. Oh my god.
Ah.
Let me roll his wisdom. Oh
Can't get 'em
my
all.
god.
Wow.
He's like, what?
He turns around, seeing nothing, since it is his turn, and then turns around again.
I see nothing. What are you on about?
He takes several steps, 1, 2, 3, in this direction. Once he's noticed that his companion has tossed in what he called the keystone into what he called the pool of limitless tears, I think he called it. He's going to advise his companion, move out of the way. The Sakurai are light and weak. I can end him quickly. This is your only chance, Avian. Surrender now and I will not kill you.
Fool! The same offer falls to you. Pray that you do not misuse my mercy.
Roll intimidation. He spends the rest of his move hesitating, looking between Zaid and his superior. To which his superior says,
Really? Don't we have enough problems with the paranoia of the beholder? And these fools.
answered only by silence from the man next to the armory. Which means it's Calder's turn.
Coulter is just gripping his staff at the ready here, and I'm just going to jump forward and try to slam the door since I was thinking blast, I don't have a hold portal spell, and let me just go ahead and use my movement and jump forward. So I'm right there. Coulter snaps out of his reverie quickly, jumps forward, grabs the door, and tries to slam it shut as hard as he can.
Boom. And then you hear a wham as someone walks into it.
I just run up against it and just put my back against it.
You hold fast the door.
And my owl flaps menacingly at the other guy to just sort of give him a general threat of just better not do anything. And
Away with your owl. I've always hated Thorn. Please, Coulter, mercy. You know I only wanted the best for the wizards. It is ours to rule, you know that. A warlord ruling over Gorised? This is not our way. Why do you help these Runians? I thought you were a man of reason, of knowledge.
Man of reason, you should know that many of those visions that have been sent are but deceptions and lies. They've drawn you to their power by your weak desire for greatness.
He's silenced by your response. Alright, it is this guy's turn next to Zaid. He lifts up his spear, and he raised his spear like a javelin and threw it at the Sakurai warrior. Sailing past him. Nolame, you hear a splash suddenly as the water elemental reveals itself, striking from behind. You feel a splash against your back, but it was almost enough to push you into the pool of limitless tears. Zaid, it's your turn.
Zaid is going to close the distance with another charge, hoping that his familiarity with the sword is less so than with the spear.
Very well. You charge forth and stick your blade where?
Straight into his neck if I can.
Oh my god, this poor guy. This poor evil cultist.
He threw a spear at me. I gave him a chance.
Alright, you stick him through the neck and he crumples to the ground. Wolfrun, what do you do?
Wolfrun's not quite dumb enough to try to attack a water elemental directly, but what he is going to do is move over here and draw his crossbow on Wizard Boy. He pulls out his crossbow and attempts to fire a bolt straight for the wizard's neck.
Oh my goodness.
Ooh.
A critical. The bolt sails across the air. As he was belting out the next insult delivered to Zaid, he was suddenly stopped with a thunk. He took a moment to realize what just happened to him. Quite literally silenced. Ro, it's your turn.
Ro's eyes widen as she sees this water elemental reappear, and with a new sense of urgency, she attempts to pick the lock one more time.
You might have surprised yourself when you heard a sudden click and felt something in the mechanics of the lock move through the knife. It soon fell away, dropping beneath you. Everyone in the room heard the click and clatter of the padlock land on the floor, and the rattling of chains as Ro's door was freed. After 6 long days, what do you do now?
I will attempt to leap out and run towards the water elemental to give aid to this person who is being accosted. So I want to sort of flank the water elemental. Once I reach right up against the water elemental, I say, "You look like you could use a hand," trying to mask how intimidated I actually am by this strange creature. And then I would like to I kind of dig deep inside my warrior spirit and draw on a surge of energy. I'll use that training and centering myself to make sure my attack with this dagger, something that I've used many times, well trained in this tool, for my bonus action using fighting spirit. And then I will make an attack with the dagger. I'm testing the waters here, going to just slash right at the midsection of this creature to see what, if any, effect blade can have on water.
There is no effect.
So this time I'm going to attempt to slash a bit higher up just to see if there's any difference, and maybe it'll have a greater chance of slashing through and causing some sort of damage closer towards where I imagine this creature's head or sense of self is.
Though it takes on the facsimile of a humanoid being, it is made entirely of water. When you put in your blade, it simply moves around the blade.
Well, that's unfortunate, she says.
As I see our new ally attempt to slash at this thing and the way it dodges, having no idea where Coulter is, I just scream at the top of my lungs, "Coulter, we need someone to freeze this thing!"
So he turns around upon hearing this. Now he knows you're the enemy, Nolame, and he begins to move towards you.
Yay.
Nolame, it's your turn.
I think he's panicking because this is the exact thing that he's been trying to avoid the entire time in this dungeon.
What do you mean?
Is being focused on by literally anything, let alone probably something that's big and scary. His knee-jerk reaction is to pull out the thing he's been saving in case he gets cornered, and he attempts to cast color spray.
You notice a effect. Whether it was hurt or not, it was stunned. It froze to react to whatever you did. Whether it was hurt or not, it is unclear, but you have bought some time.
Then Nolme's going to take the opportunity to go 15 feet to his left, trying to put some distance between himself and the big scary thing.
Alright, it is his turn, and he tries to lift his hand, trying to cast a spell towards Zaid. Zaid, you feel a gust of cold air, though it appears by the changing of his body language that he was expecting something more. However, there's a sheet of ice that formed directly behind you, and the entire assortment of weapons was coated in a Mr. Freeze-style ray of ice. Coulter's turn.
I hear combat inside, and I hear much struggle, so I'm gonna try to slip the door open enough, see what's going on in there, and see if I can help. I heard my name creaking open. I quickly spin around. Coulter will just attempt what's closest to his mind, his cantrip of cultists, and a ray of frost blasts out of my finger. Sort of blue.
Oh my goodness, half of its flank turns to solid ice. It looks down at the damaged area, and then tries to sneak into its invisibility. It vanishes.
Coulter just looks at his finger, looks back, and blinks.
Ro appears shocked at seeing this ray of frost shoot out. She's quite unfamiliar with seeing offensive magic like this. However, she's glad that it seems like they have some reinforcements.
Coulter just briefly nods and does a short bow. Coulter of Avendrad, at your service.
Ro gives a quick kind of polite bow and says, Ro of Moorbridge. It's a long story.
Zaid, roll perception. You see that there seems to be a current leading towards the easternmost wall panel you're facing, under the painting. Like water's flowing towards there.
Zaid's going to attempt to charge away from that. Okay, so he will shout out to Wolfram and point over to one of the levers that he's passing. Zaid says, "The lever!" as he attempts to try and charge and attack the remaining cultist. So Zaid is making probably the most awkward charge of his life, trudging his legs high up as if part of some sort of deadly marching band, wielding his rapier and bringing it out forward to make a false edge strike overhead and trying to slice towards the man's mouth or neck.
And as he's backing away, he futilely shoots ray after ray of frost. He falls. Finally, he lets out a gasp, and as he succumbs, so too slowly does the water in the room recede, but the ice stays and lingers.
Secure the living, check the dead, take their crystals from them.
You still want me to shoot that lever?
I think we're all right for the moment. I thought it would drain the water, but it seems that's already been taken care of.
Wolfrun is smirking, by the way.
Ro grits her teeth and looks at this cultist between Coulter and herself. Does this cultist seem shifty or hostile or...
You two notice a handkerchief, and you know that it is a recent affectation of the nobility. So he has one, and there's a D on it.
Through gritted teeth, she holds her dagger up, points it towards him. A little loosely, kind of cavalier with the dagger, though, and gestures towards the spear in his hand and says, drop it.
You cannot make me surrender my only defense. He tosses his shield, which he recognized did not help him in the battle. Have that, woman. Let it not be said I was bested by the weakest of your kind.
Ro smirks and says, "You kept me in a cage for 6 days. If you want to see just how weak I am, come over here."
The man decidedly stays where he is, his eyes no longer meeting your own.
Exactly what I thought. She looks around and starts taking in the details of her companions. Well, new companions, at least for the moment. And anyone who's looking at her sees that she's a little tall for a woman, but definitely not tall by general standards. She has white hair, kind of done up in a top knot with this wooden dowel holding it in place. She's wearing leather armor that has some quilted protection over one shoulder, and it's buttoned at a 45-degree angle pulled across her chest. And she has these rope sandals and baggy trousers.
This dude over here is still alive too, right?
This guy right here?
Yeah.
He is still alive, although leaning against this overturned table. He is bleeding. He is no longer a combatant. He is old. Older than Wolfrun, but not truly elderly.
As Wolfrun walks by Ro, she gives a polite bow and says, "I never got a chance to thank you for this," and holds up the dagger. "My name's Ro. Nice to meet you."
He just looks at her and says, "Wolfrun, don't mention it."
Wolfrun, could you describe your features to Ro?
Wolfrun's gaunt but muscular, dark-haired, blue eyes, very pronounced brow, almost abnormally pronounced. Looks like he's been living in the woods for about 38 years, and he smells kind of like it too.
Ro starts stretching her muscles that have been caged up for days and looks around the chamber to see if she can spot her equipment at all, and says to the group, "Are we sure we're safe here?"
No, we're not.
"I'll need my equipment. Have you seen a bag, 2 swords, one of them quite large?"
There was a chamber with some weapons in it down the hall.
Nolame, as the water recedes, you notice that a significant amount drains under a seam beneath the painting in front of you.
Is the painting like completely visible now? I wasn't sure if it was covered in ice or not.
The one before you is completely visible. It was not covered in ice.
Can I remove it from the wall?
You remove it from the wall. There's a peg.
I just taking it at face value, attempt to remove the painting from its frame and then store it away as I then turn to investigate the grate where the water is draining.
There's no grate. It drained under a seam beneath the painting.
Then, deducing that there might be a passage here, I return to the peg and attempt to pull on it or push it or turn it.
When you pull on the peg, everyone in the party can hear the sound of stone moving, like the wall slowly moving upwards, and everyone in the party can see that there's a passage to the east, now revealed by Nolame.
Hey, what's this then?
That's where your swords are.
Ro, without a word, immediately starts walking with quite some speed towards that new passageway.
You quickly heard the snapping of something, and you felt resistance against your ankle as if you had just pulled the tripwire. And immediately in front of you, a trapped crossbow triggers. It barely misses both of you.
Nolame looks over his shoulder at Ro and says, "You probably don't want to stand very close to me. The luck of the half-elven dictates that the next time something like that happens, I'm going to be missed again, and the person behind me is going to get hit right in the throat."
"I'll wait here until you clear through."
Okay, Nolame proceeds into the room cautiously.
Inside the hidden chamber, the party was rewarded with an assortment of equipment, coin, and supplies. They picked through the contents carefully and took what they could. They also found Ro's old equipment, which she hastily put on. Now that the battle was concluded, the location of the mysterious keystone that was tossed inside still nagged at the party. Donning the cold corridor masks that Coulter had detected held within them an enchantment of water breathing. Wolfram, Zaid, and Ro all jumped into the pool of limitless tears to reclaim the mysterious keystone. Then, they vanished.